Well, Greg. So, why did there we go. And where? Where's the curtains? The curtain. Mm. Um, maybe easier for that. That's weird. You're so strange. That won't range. Oh. Yeah, there it is. Never mind. Again? What? Going up to the flag. It's good. Where's everybody? That's not gonna be on the weekend. Sunday the 14th. Ooh, cleanup day.
Hey, everybody, I'm here. This is Tim.
Hi there, Tim. Everybody else is muted.
Okay.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Do you like that little snowstorm we had?
Not really.
Neither did I.
I don't love it when it falls in June.
Yeah.
So with or without video? Oh, video. That's, okay. That's what I want to do. All right. Why did Jerry? Why are you sending it to my?
Those in there?
Okay. Oh, that's right. Executive session. We're going to be busy tonight. Let's get through it. Where's everybody? No. Daniel.
I just saw Rob and I talked to Keith earlier today, so they all should be here. But I don't see them yet.
Your microphone's not up very far, Ken. I don't know.
Maybe it's facing me.
There you
I
go.
heard, I just saw Rob about a half hour ago.
Okay.
And Keith I talked to on the phone earlier today, so they both should be arriving, but
Okay.
they haven't yet.
No, they haven't.
Yeah, they still have a couple minutes.
Hmm. Hmm. I just have 2 so far. Mhm. And people, we need more than 2. There's John.
I'm in.
Did you have trouble?
Oh, I was just trying to get some stuff ready and I was just running a little late. Sorry, am I late?
Well, you're not the last one. And
Oh,
we still
good.
don't, we don't have, we just got the quorum. Okay. I was getting
Sorry.
nervous here.
Oh, sorry.
And Jerry's tuning in. There's Jerry. Okay. What do you think? Get going and let the other 2 join in?
Sure.
I think so. Okay. It is 6:02 p.m. on June 9th, excuse me, 2020, and I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. Ken has his camera turned to the flag, so if everybody could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I'm going to move on to the roll call. I am Lynette Kelsey, police judge. Rob Connell, not here yet. Keith Holmes, also not yet. John Jennings.
Here.
Paul Hingen.
Here.
Mary Smith.
Here.
Tim Allen.
Here.
And we have a quorum. Agenda approval. I have a couple of things that I think we need to add to the agenda. Does anybody else have anything?
I have an
Sure.
executive, yeah. Executive session.
Okay, yep, I've got that on my list.
Okay.
I also wanted to do a census update as a regular item, probably under staff report. And I also wanted to do a mention of the cleanup day on Saturday and the award that was given to Cindy Neely from Colorado Preservation, Inc. So, any others?
Are we discussing the policy with law enforcement, the
It's in
use of
there.
force policy?
It's in there. It's under staff report.
Oh, I see it. Sorry, my bad.
That's all right. There's a lot in here.
We'll be here all night. Start the coffee.
All right. If
I'm all
nobody has anything else, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Audience business. Members of the audience have 5 minutes to present any matter of interest not already on the agenda. Do we have anybody here for audience business?
Good evening. It's Les and Veronica Mays from 605 Brownell Street.
Uh-huh.
We would really like an update on what we spoke about 2 weeks ago, which was the payment for our damaged pipe. Is that the reimbursement and payment to the plumbing service?
That's actually in our payables. So I was expecting it would get discussed then. I did, have you been in contact with Kent?
The last contact I had was when I called him 2 Fridays ago.
Okay,
And I don't have any other updates.
okay, all right.
This is the meeting where it can get paid, and I've been communicated with the plumbing company, and we talked about that, and it's where that bill gets paid, so.
Okay, yeah, it is in our payables and I figured the discussion would happen then. So, okay, thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, we will move on. The next thing on our agenda is the payables from May 22nd, 2020 through June 4th, 2020. Kent, do you want to let's just go into the reimbursement that's on here.
Well, there's 2 checks. One for the reimbursement for the sewer line repair
Uh-huh.
to Leroy and Veronica Mays. And then there's also for $38.90, and then also repairs to the Brownell sewer to Priority Plumbing and Heating for $12,807. So that is the work that was done here, the most recent, and that's what's being taken care of with those 2 bills.
Okay.
Could you explain outside the payables, just these numbers, so that we have a better understanding of what needed to be done to correct the issue that was over there?
It was on the service line to the main. It was right next to where the work was done for the water by Velocity Construction. It was not actually, it was right outside the gate. And I can send a little graphic for that, but where they ended up fixing the line, where Priority Plumbing found it, they had to dig once. And then it was a little bit further towards the main for the town. And they came back a second time on that Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. and dug up and repaired the main, or the service line. Service line was a clay service line. It was partially collapsed at that location,
Okay.
and it was repaired on that Saturday. Our staff oversaw or came in and saw what they were doing on that Saturday as well. And it was repaired. So with the situation right next to where Velocity was doing their work, they ended up repairing our main at that time, but that's not when this occurred, or the problems with what occurred causing the problem with the maze's plumbing. They notified us later, and through some investigation, found out that the service line had been damaged. So.
And the reimbursement to Les and Veronica, is that repair of the
That's the
actual?
same repair.
Okay,
So
so
they had paid some of the amount of the bill already,
okay,
and they've provided us documentation to that effect, and that's
Okay.
why it could have been done all to priority. I just didn't want any delay to the maze regarding what they had taken care of up to that point.
okay, all right. Anybody else have any questions? I notice Rob Connell has joined us. We'll get you.
Keith is trying, but hasn't made it.
Okay, okay. The expense for the chain link fencing, is that for the parking lots down at the lake? It's under Water Capital Improvement Fund.
No, that is the fencing around. I gotta look at the company first. Hold on just a minute.
Arvada fence.
Arvada fence is the fence that was done around the wastewater treatment plant
Okay,
on the back side of it.
okay. Should it be out of Water Capital Improvement or wastewater?
I will check that with Mary when she returns.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Am I allowed to ask questions about the reimbursement?
Who's speaking?
This is Les Mays.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The 3890.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because the 3890 was the deposit to get the plumber to actually repair, but there were previous payments, and I'm curious about those that haven't been mentioned as far as the initial bill for coming out and having to jet the lines. And so there were two previous plumbing bills along with a cleanup of the crawl space. And so I was curious about those. And I'm asking because I only heard about the 3890, and that was only the deposit to initiate the repair of the pipe.
I'm not able to say yes or no. Those bills were not included, Les, with this payment. But the 3890 is getting paid tonight.
So they're not
And-
included in the reimbursement payment, but I did send you those receipts.
I understand that, but it's not included with this reimbursement.
Okay.
And the determination as I continue to talk with the contractor regarding what had occurred, which I just actually had another conversation with them today. I'm trying to work that out regarding those. So,
Okay,
and as far as the discussion regarding the cleanup. I need to have a conversation with you, not here in a public meeting, but I need to have a conversation separately regarding that.
Okay. So. Any other questions or comments? I would entertain a motion to approve the payables as presented.
I'll make the
Tim,
motion. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
okay, I'll make the motion to approve the payables from May 22nd to June 4th of 2020.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the payables from May 22nd through June 4th, 2020 as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We have the minutes from our last meeting, which was May 26, 2020. Did anybody have any questions, comments, corrections? I had a couple. I'll go ahead and start. In the audience business section, I wanted some wording added that Les and Veronica Mays were requesting reimbursement of expenses for the repairs, and that it be noted that I believe as of the 26th, the night of our meeting, that the water service had been restored and repaired. And then in the very last sentence of that section, that Kent believed that the water main contractor had probably caused the problem, not that it had been definitely determined yet. And then in the information section of the minutes, under the Heritage Center, I wanted it noted that the donation from the virtual concerts had actually or was going to be made to the Georgetown Police Department. So those are all the corrections and additions that I had. Anybody have any others? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll second. This is Tim.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the May 26, 2020 meeting as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. So first item on our new and unfinished business is the proposed amendment of the encroachment license for 1108 Main Street. And that's, I saw Daniel Babian is here in our audience. Who'd like to start us off on the intro to this? Would that be you, Kent, or is that
Probably.
Jerry?
Yeah, I'll start off and Jerry may
Thank you.
finish up. This encroachment license, there was a request for an amendment to encroachment license at 1108 Main. Requesting, it first went to the Design Review Commission regarding the fence issue, but regarding during the application process, it was actually a previous encroachment license from 1999 had been approved by the town of Georgetown. The encroachment license, either for an original encroachment license or for an amendment to an encroachment license, has a process that was passed by the board in 2005. And that was the Board of Selectmen at a previous meeting asked that that be followed. It was given to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission reviewed it and has recommended for approval the amendment to the encroachment license. And then staff, we had asked at last meeting whether staff to go ahead and draft an amendment to that encroachment license. And Jerry went ahead and created that as well as the resolution to approve the encroachment license. So Jerry, you may take it from there.
Okay, am I on audio?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good, great. What you have is both a resolution and a encroachment license agreement. I gave it a little thought and came to the conclusion that rather than amending the 1999 encroachment license, while I recognized its existence, you'll notice in the resolution, I provided that this is a separate encroachment license agreement for the fence. That's what has been applied for, and that's what's being approved. So the resolution recites those historical facts and then recites that the applicant wants to construct a white wooden fence, and the resolution says the board agrees with that and approves a license agreement. The real action, of course, then is in the license agreement, which is attached to Exhibit A of the resolution. That permits, well, it's pretty simple. The first paragraph permits the fence to be erected not to exceed 3 feet in height in a design the same as was shown to us. So we just took the design that Mr. Babian provided and made that design Exhibit 1. That's the fence design. Exhibit 2 is the site plan to sort of show where the fence is going to be. And that's attached as well. And that's an exhibit, I think, from Mr. Babian saying proposed new fence line in red. So we're just attaching what has been provided to us. And those really form kind of both the description and when you think about it, the limitation on what's being granted by this license agreement. Section 2 says that it's Mr. Babian's sole cost to construct the fence and maintain it in good condition. We're not requiring insurance, but we are requiring that the town be indemnified from any injury to persons as a result of that fence being located there, since it's not the town's fence and it's a fence that you're allowing to take place on public property. The Section 3 has the term perpetual and running with the land. That was discussed earlier, and I understand the need for that. That's fine, and that's in there. It requires it to be recorded so that it can run with the land. If he sells the property, it'll show up on title, and that's good. As a seller, I'd want that on my title, and as a buyer, I'd want that too. But it does recite that the town code section that specifically provides that any encroachment that you grant on private or on public property can be revoked by you. It's perpetual, it runs with the land, but if for some reason you need to have that land back, you're not selling this land, you're not giving it away, you're allowing an encroachment to take place, probably for many, many years. But nevertheless, the code requires that you not give it up unless you're going to actually sell it. You're not doing that. So that's the package. The way to approve it, and you probably want to hear from Mr. Babian to confirm that he's in agreement with these conditions, but the way to approve it eventually will be a motion to approve resolution number 6. You likely want to hear from Mr. Babian now.
I don't have any argument. It sounds good to me.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. All right. Any one of the board have any questions about the resolution or the encroachment license? I did notice that you had taken out the words amendment, and I guess I assumed that it might be because you might want to revoke the fence encroachment without it affecting the existing retaining wall encroachment, and the two could be addressed separately if you wanted any revocation to happen.
I agree with that. And I think that's good for both the town and the property owner when you think about it.
Mhm.
If for whatever reason the fence needs to go away, wouldn't want, but you're fine with the wall, then fine. If for some reason the wall needs to go away, but you want to preserve the ability for a fence to be somewhere there, you've got that independently. And so that's why I felt it was better to have them
Okay.
separate.
All right. If there's no further discussion, would somebody like to make a motion to approve resolution number 6? A resolution of the Board of Selectmen for the town of Georgetown, Colorado, authorizing and approving an encroachment license for property located at 1108 Main Street.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and I note that Keith Holmes has joined us now. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. What?
I was just gonna say that I think when you were given the title to that motion, you should include that your authorization for the police judge to sign.
Well, that's not in the title of the resolution, but you could add that to the motion. So. Go ahead.
Keith.
So
That's
it's
correct.
been-
It's not in the title, but the resolution, if you adopt it, authorizes and in fact directs the police judge and town clerk to sign off.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is a request from Lucha Cantina at the Red Ram to operate a food truck. And we did get a letter just this afternoon, I believe, outlining how they would like to operate. And Jennifer is providing us with the letter. Thank you. And as the board might remember, our food truck regulations in our code are very specific and pretty restricted to allow them only during festivals and for limited amounts of time. And so given that Lucha can't operate because of the fire they experienced on May 15th, they're requesting to be allowed. And we think Kent has determined that we are able to allow this on a limited basis and approve it under the COVID-19 emergency provisions that we've already got in place. Kent, do you want to add something?
It was also brought to, and Nicholas and Alicia are on here as well. And they may want to say something as well, Lynette. But
Oh, yes. Mhm.
it was presented to the Promotions Commission last week. And there was almost unanimous. I don't know if anyone said no, but there was a pretty good in favor of that allow the Luchas to operate with the food truck. There didn't seem to be any discussion, but they did not. One of their directions was they did not want to mess with the actual ordinance for the food trucks at this time, or they make that recommendation, and would prefer just the opportunity to do it this route, which would basically highlight the individual circumstance regarding Luchas. If there's going to be a general discussion regarding food trucks, that one, it would probably take too much time to get something to agree to regarding changes to the food truck ordinance and to benefit Luchas in a timely manner. And second of all, that it allows a little bit more that parameters can be put on any direction given. And Jerry can speak to that as well. And any possible order regarding allowing a food truck to occur. Right now, the town code only allows food trucks during special events and by approval either by the Business Promotions Commission or by myself in certain circumstances. So.
Jerry, did you have anything to add?
Not much. As the board knows, you adopted a resolution in March declaring an emergency and giving certain authority to the town administrator, in some cases to be exercised with consultation with a police judge, to basically waive, to do a number of things, to respond to the pandemic as we conceived of it in March. And of course, a lot has changed, and we've learned a lot about how local governments respond to the pandemic, the things they need to do and don't need to do, things they need to do quickly and don't need to do quickly. But in March, we were all kind of starting out on this. But nevertheless, that resolution granted authority to town administrator to waive town regulations as needed for the general welfare. And that resolution, in my opinion, is broad enough to allow the town administrator to waive food truck ordinance and instead allow food truck under specific conditions. And so this order is written with that authority in mind. You'll notice there's a draft order in the packet right after a copy of the March 24 resolution. And I kind of cooked up this order with some specific conditions. The real action, of course, is in paragraph 2, which says that it can be operated with the following conditions placed upon it. And we clearly need to hear from Luchas about sort of particular what they would expect, where the meals would expect to be prepared. As it was described to me and as I wrote it, the truck was for delivery and distribution and not for cooking. I do notice that in the letter, I don't have objection to it, we just need to be clear about what's being allowed. And we need to import some of the conditions that they recite in their letter into the order. And we can have a full discussion toward the end of the discussion. I can do what I do, which is to kind of incorporate some things into the order, see if you like that, and you could take a motion directing the administrator to enter that order if you're comfortable with it. But one of the things that needs to be discussed is, will there be food prep in the truck or not? Other than that, the other issue probably is hours of operation, which Lucas has suggested, and location. And they've got a couple locations they're okay with and kind of want your reaction to. So it would seem to me the proper way to go about this is maybe hear from Luchas generally, and in particular on where it is they want to put the truck, and will food prep take place in the truck, and have a discussion about that, because that does expand a little bit from what it was originally described to me. I don't personally have an opinion on it, but you'll want to hear from them and see whether you're comfortable with what they're proposing. That's what I got.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. So it looks like it's your turn, Leisha and Nick.
Yes, good evening. Thanks
Hi.
for having us tonight.
You bet.
Well, first and foremost, a huge thank you to all of you, the community of Georgetown, the county. Everybody's been so great. The support and generosity, the thoughts and the prayers, the messages that we get. It has been so overwhelming, and it has just made us so thankful to be part of this community, and to go through this and have you alongside of us is just fantastic. And it just makes us so strong and want us to come back as quickly as we can and as strong as we can and as fast as we can. So thank you for this. And any questions we can answer. If you didn't get a copy of our letter, we just kind of outlined exactly that. Number one, yes, we have a food truck. We'd love to bring it to Georgetown, and we are hoping to open sooner than later. We have spoken to the owners and have gotten a verbal permission of the owners of the Red Ram, Julie and Steve, who have given us a verbal authorization to when we are or if we are allowed to utilize a food truck, to use the rear parking lot of the facility there. Hours of operation, unfortunately, we can't come back probably 7 days. It's just a little tough to maneuver a food truck with a very small team because of the size of the food truck and whatnot. And being in a food truck 10 to 12 hours a day, it's probably our best to come back, and probably 6 days a week would be the best situation for us to not tire our team out and have an opportunity to do what we need to do if there is a service or a performance measure we need to take with the food truck. So that would be our hours that we kind of drafted in the letter would be 11:30 to 8:30. 11 to 8:30, and that would be Thursday through Tuesday. We have spoken to the folks the new owners of the Dusty Rose. There is a commercial kitchen there, and they have kind of outlined and drafted a lease agreement that if this so passes, that we would sign with them for about 5 to 6 months to utilize that kitchen. Also spoke to Sally, who is our Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment person, to sign off on a mobile license, make sure that commercial kitchen is acceptable, and so on and so forth.
Regarding food prep, most of the food would be prepared in that commercial kitchen, besides garnishes and things like that would happen in the food truck. Assembly, for example, street tacos, the meat's going to be prepared in the kitchen, but the taco would be assembled in the food truck.
Depending on the meat and so on.
The food truck does contain a grill. So if you're ordering a burger, the burger would be prepared in the food truck. We're not gonna cook the burger across the street and bring it over to you, things like that. But anything that requires the use of an oven, things like that would be prepared in the commercial kitchen.
And so basically what I'm hearing is that the state food service license for each facility would cover whatever preparation was necessary in each facility. And I guess I don't see a reason to restrict it any further than what the state license would restrict it to. So I don't know if the board members have any other thoughts on that, but also wondered about the time limit. I don't want to set a definite limit if you're thinking of continuing it until you are able to reopen. So inside the repaired and restored bricks and mortar building. So
certainly one thing an issue we do face with the food truck is weather. And so that's, we're projecting, we would love, I'm pushing really hard to have the storefront itself be open in time for Christmas market. But if that doesn't happen, I don't know that we could still run the food truck during the months of like December, January, February, just because of the cold temperatures.
Our target is at least at some point here in June through possibly Halloween time, the end of October, before we see some freezes that, obviously we couldn't utilize the food truck because of the water lines and so on and so forth.
Okay, all right.
I have a few questions.
Yes, please.
So let me start by saying I'm supporting you in your food truck endeavor into keeping Lucha's open, but I just have a few questions of curiosity.
Sure.
So wherever the food truck ends up being parked, is it going to be there continuously, or is it driving back and forth? I mean, how are you restocking it, I guess? Or is it stationary once it's there?
Sure. So honestly, we're kind of deferring to the town and what town board's preference is on that. We did receive an invitation to park it over by Cedar Creek. What is it? Cedar Creek Brewery?
Cedar Creek.
Cedar Creek
No,
Brewery.
it's Cabin Creek.
Cabin Creek Brewery. I know it wasn't Cedar Creek. Cabin Creek a couple days a week, but we're going to defer to the town on that, whether they would prefer that we keep it in one place or move it back and forth between, those two locations.
And that would be a short period of time.
Yeah.
That was kind of, we've been given a unique opportunity with Cabin Creek for a couple of days for the next 3 weeks to come back to provide food Tuesday and Wednesday through a commissary agreement. But we would love nothing more once or during that time to start preparing for a permanent place. Obviously, back where we're located downtown off of 6th Street, whether it's on 6th Street or behind, again, the building of the Red Ram. So this opportunity that we've been given would be temporary. It's a kind of a win-win for both of us to show community involvement, to come back, start preparing our permanent comeback until our building is ready to or for us to enter it again and be at our permanent building at 606.
Regarding the kind of other part of your question as to where the food is housed and how that all works, the food itself would still be stored in the commercial kitchen, besides small quantities of food that can be stored in the small fridge in the food truck.
And we have our commercial refrigerators and freezers within that establishment, commercial kitchen, that we will utilize to keep the food there.
So I guess I better pay more attention to when I drive by Cabin Creek to see what your food truck looks like, because I was curious of a picture, and would it be to the benefit of the town and your business to have it parked on 6th Street? Is it an attractive food truck so that, I mean, certainly more attractive than boarded up windows at Lucha's, and so would that help overall both our causes, the town and what it looks like, and certainly your business, and I'll put your business, first and foremost here. And I guess, so that was really my question, if it was going to be able to be stationary,
right,
and then just a fixture there rather than having to,
right. No, it would be
thing.
stationary.
So then I guess my other question is, if it isn't in front of the boarded up Lucha's, and if you're behind, how do you foresee serving? How are people going to know it's back there, other than that there's a food truck back there? Are you going to have tables out on the side? I mean, how do you see your business,
those Hollywood lights that go back and forth?
I was thinking that same thing. That same thing. No, I think if we're able to put signage somewhere, maybe on those the plywood in the windows right now, whatever signage, maybe we could utilize our sandwich board, to point out which direction we are, the rear of the building. So we would, ask permission to use at least those two resources for now.
And then as far as tables and things go, we have discussed, putting a few tables out there, keeping in mind the restrictions in place with COVID anyway. So we're gonna wanna make sure and follow those rules, and they'd have to be spaced apart. We're gonna need to talk to Julie and Steve too, a little bit more about what they are okay with us putting out there as far as tables go. Typically with the food truck, it's more, people just come up, get their food and take it home. But we would love to be able to have a couple of tables out there.
So if we're using picnic tables or something of that nature, maybe 6 to 8 tables, if it's allowable, if we have the space, within that back part of the parking lot.
So you would maintain, so if it's parked in back, you're gonna have a seating area in the back,
Yes,
not
ma'am.
aside from whatever happens on 6th Street. And so this is kind of a duh question, and Rob, you'll laugh at this. You are going to be operating your bar from the food truck?
I hope.
That's our hope.
Yeah,
We'll
you're
have
gonna be laughing,
we'll have
Rob.
to ensure what the licenses allow. So, getting our questions answered through, the state. I don't know that yet. I will have some answers, for you then, and then we can address that once we have those answers. But at least get the food portion of our business up and running.
So if we said yes to you tonight, I don't think we're ready to say yes to you tonight, but I don't know, if we were, hypothetically, say we say yes, when would you anticipate back over there, back, front, wherever you are on the roof, when would you open up? How soon are you ready? How quick are you ready?
Our goal would be as early as next Tuesday.
Taco
Your
Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday.
Why
Aha.
wouldn't
I
we
see
say
that.
yes
Oh,
tonight?
okay. Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Okay.
Why wouldn't we say yes tonight?
Well, we haven't decided yet, Rob. Let's continue to ask questions that inform. So, so big is this food truck? I'm trying to envision if it was parked out in 6th Street, how much room would it take up?
It's a 15-footer. It's a 15-foot food truck.
So about 2 parking places?
Yes, more or less.
About, okay.
Lynette?
All right.
I don't hear them saying they want it out front. I hear them saying they'll do signage out front and locate it in the parking lot. I hear that as their desired, as as their approach.
Why
Am I
not 6th
wrong
Street?
about that?
Why not 6th Street?
Well, I think it's up to them to kind of decide on location.
Correct. And
I
I
thought that's what I heard from them.
I heard that mentioned, the parking lot area mentioned as the primary requested. However, a possible option B would be out on 6th Street. So am I misunderstanding?
No, ma'am.
No, it's really, wherever the town's most comfortable.
Okay.
There are to be tables for customers that will make 6th Street more difficult,
Right.
I think, to use.
Not if we open.
Well, hang on. It may be that what you might want to go with is the parking lot until they have done the modification of premises on the liquor side, which is a separate process.
Correct. Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I have, this is Tim. I've got some comments. I don't have much questions, but Mr. and Mrs. Quintana, I'm sympathetic to your cause, your case here, but I was struggling with this because in the recent past, we've had some residents of Georgetown that wanted to operate a food truck here, And they
Who's
were going
this?
to have to comply with what's in the municipal code, which is very limited, 3 or 4 days maximum, special events only. And so that took away that business plan that they had. And I'm struggling with it because I think all of the people in town need to be treated the same. And so I
It's an
was
existing
really
business. Jesus Christ.
And then I saw Jerry's draft order
I'm
authorizing
not.
place use of the food truck, and the stipulations that were in here, I thought that I could go along with, but I can't go along with allowing or supporting this plan when we told other residents of Georgetown that they had to comply with the municipal code. My gut feeling is that we'd be all better off if we would just make an amendment or change the municipal code about food trucks, and we could have started that already. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
May I say something?
Yes, Rob.
While I appreciate where Tim's comments are going in terms, because I really feel like we ought to loosen the restrictions on food trucks as well. But a lot of these folks that had their business plan squashed didn't have their restaurant burned down. It was only because of our restrictions that they had their business plan squashed. The last thing I want to do is get in the way or be a fly in the ointment to their success. And whatever we can do to help them get going again, I think it's our responsibility.
I agree. I think this is a special circumstance and we need to look at it outside of our typical food truck ordinance. That was put together for a different reason in my mind than this extenuating circumstance.
Yeah, that's all well and good, but you know that people are going to ask a question, and we're going to have to be able to answer that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I haven't heard enough or talked enough to know if the Quintanas have looked for another place to lease to open their business, or other means other than just jumping right into this food truck idea, which I think we're going to get some feedback on.
Okay.
Because we're not treating everybody the same. That's my thought.
Okay. Did you have any comment about, have you looked into leasing a alternative brick and mortar establishment?
Yeah, we have. One, we already own the food truck, so that's, kind of why we looked and why we want to use the food truck. But two, we don't want to send a message to our current landlords, Julia and Steve, that we're not going to want to use that space. We do want to continue to use the space. The Red Ram is something that is important to the town of Georgetown. It's important to us. And so we don't want to send a message that Julia and Steve need to start looking for new tenants.
Or to the community, or to the, to anybody. We don't want to send that message. Unfortunately, it's going to take time. I wish we could wave the magic wand and it was rebuilt tomorrow. But the reality is there's a timeline, and if we're able to be back in December, which is our goal, that's wonderful, and we can't wait to be there. Unfortunately, there's limited space in Georgetown. Other restaurant owners in town have even been kind enough to offer their kitchen space for a short time, just to help us get up and running. And we have been, just so, again, overwhelmed by the support and the opportunities, and just the hopes for us to get back up and running. We have a great team in Georgetown. I told Sebastian and I told Leisha when we set foot back in October, you know, this is a great team we have up here. They really work together. I've never worked in an establishment in my 19 years where I come and most of your staff is cross-trained. So we want to keep those folks working. And that's what our goal is. You know, we don't live directly in Georgetown. At some point, I hope we will be members of the community. But right now we're members through our business, and we would love nothing more than to get back and to get messy and to get dirty and to be passionate about what we do, and that's prepare Mexican food. So I understand there's going to be concern, there's going to be frustration, and there's going to be some questions raised as to, you know, why are we allowed to use a food truck? If we didn't have this food truck, I don't know what we'd do. We'd have to, well, we'd be using this food truck maybe here in Denver, but we want to go back to Georgetown where everybody has been so grateful and so supportive of what we've been doing. And we want to show them that, you know, we're troopers through this, and we're going to be there for a long time, as long as you'll have us and our townspeople will have us.
Okay, thank you. John, Paul, any thoughts? Keith?
I think that it's a special situation, and that I agree with the going ahead and allow them to use the food truck, just for that reason.
I agree.
I agree with the same thing. This is a special situation. Restaurant burned down. Rob said it best, that others that they didn't have a business that got destroyed when they requested a food truck. So this is an extenuating circumstance, and I think we should move forward.
Yep.
I have to agree. I think in the strictest sense, I think Tim is not wrong in saying that the food truck ordinance was well thought out and there was a purpose there, and we did deny somebody the ability to operate as a food truck, but they didn't have an existing brick and mortar restaurant that is so badly damaged that they can't use it. They didn't previously have a business license and also a food service license. I think the fact that these folks did have those in place and have now lost their ability to operate in the brick and mortar location, it makes that a special circumstance that I think we should be looking for ways to allow them to continue to operate, be a presence in the town, and keep their employees going and contribute to the community while the building is repaired. And this isn't for an extended, open-ended period of time. It's limited, and the approval will go away as soon as they can either as soon as the date rolls around that's put in this ordinance or this order, or until they're able to move back into the building itself and reopen with regular operations. I think it's a special circumstance, and I would support approving it. So
Can
yes,
I say,
Rob.
you know, there's also, this is, you know, you could look at it as kind of a test. You know, these guys might pave the way for us to realize that we're missing out on food trucks that could be, you know, not everywhere. Obviously, you want to be limited, but, you know, if they're successful, I think maybe we want to watch this so that we can tailor something that would fit for everybody.
That's possible too. Yeah.
Yes, one more question.
Yes, Mary.
I I see some of our business promotions members are here attending our meeting, and I don't know if this was the reason that they're here to support them or not, but was there anything else that they could add to weigh in one way or the other? Just
Yeah,
so that we hear back from our promotions commission?
we're here for the 6th Street pedestrian mall, but I will say that we discussed luchas in our last promotions meeting, and we all agree with what has been said as far as making an exception. You know, the issue that promotions typically has when we discuss food trucks is brick and mortar and the investment you make in brick and mortar versus someone rolling up in a truck, taking potential business away, then driving home to wherever they came from. None of this has to do with with what Quintanas are asking for. They're brick and mortar operators. They're waiting for the restaurant to be rebuilt. They have a food truck, and we feel like this is, if there's ever an exception to be made, this is it. And by the way, it'll play into the pedestrian mall aspect of it, because while I don't know what the regulation will be for any exception, we certainly need food options downtown.
Okay.
Right now.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Kent, it looked like you had a comment. No? You froze just now. So. What? Okay. So,
Okay, now can you hear me?
yes,
Now it's catching up.
Thank you.
Okay. It says my internet connection's unstable, but we'll deal with it. The number of tables or where the tables are located as far as next to the food truck. I think the order itself is around the food truck as far as for right now. The decision regarding number of tables and everything else, there is another consideration, and it kind of segues into the issue that's right after this regarding the 6th Street pedestrian mall as far as number of parking spaces. Obviously, I would recommend that luchas, the picnic tables or whatever, don't occupy the entire back parking lot back there. Allow them to spread out, and then that loses even more parking spaces. So there's other issues that can come up, but I don't see that as being regarding the order, regarding the food truck directly tonight. I mean, I think that that's one of those things that can be worked out, but I don't think it's, right here. And the same with the liquor issue. I think there's still more stuff that needs to be done with that. It's really regarding the food stuff first, and modification of premise is a subsequent issue.
Okay.
If they were gonna, I was just gonna suggest that if they were gonna do that mall, that maybe that finger right there on Rose Street would be advantageous for luchas, because they're gonna be using not only the parking lot, but the Dusty Rose across the street. And so moving food back and forth might be, we might be able to facilitate moving food back and forth better if we.
Are you talking about 6th Street or Rose Street?
Rose Street, between
Rose.
6th and
Okay.
7th.
Okay. I guess I would suggest that be a separate issue, and that be part of the discussion for pedestrian mall, the scope of it. So, and because if they, I would like to follow Jerry's interpretation of the request at this time and say, this request is for the food truck in the parking lot behind the existing building. And because there are other steps, as Jerry pointed out, to encroaching in the public right-of-way. And so let's address that as it progresses. So Jerry, did you hear anything mentioned that needs to be added or changed in your draft?
A couple of things. I made some notes. The ability to have customer tables, which I think is really important, especially if they're in the parking lot. It lends itself to that. That's all good. And what you might want is kind of a limit on the number of those tables. It might be kind of self-limiting for them, really. But you might want kind of an upper limit number on the number of tables. That's kind of a minor point. I've got the language about assembling meals and doing some minor preparation in the truck, and I can adjust that without any trouble. But the one thing that we probably should talk about is the term as drafted. And I obviously just a draft. I hadn't had the benefit of this conversation at all, and I just took a stab at it. And I said that it's indefinite to be used for at least the summer months. So I think it'd be important if there's an expectation there kind of be an ending date for this, that we put that in. I mean, you can leave it as indefinite, and I'll take out the language about summer months and we can just see. But it may be that you want to put in a hard edge date, understanding that the order goes on to say, upon 10 days, we can just say no. And immediately, if there's some kind of public health safety threat, and I would want to keep that language in any event, but might want to have a discussion on 2 points. Number of customer tables. If the Quintanas want to make a suggestion, I'd be happy to incorporate it. Number 1. And number 2, do you want to actually put in this order an expected termination date, understanding you always have the right to terminate it early? Those are the 2 things that I need a little guidance on. With that in hand, I can finalize it.
My thought on I mean, sometimes you get weather that summer kind of lingers, and sometimes it shuts people down really early in the fall. It's so hard to predict. I don't want to, I guess I would prefer not to give it a hard date before the end of the year, unless you're really thinking there needs to be. And then if weather sweeps in and prevents you from operating because you just can't keep the water lines thawed, then you close and it's done. Or you have a cold snap and then it warms up again. I'd like to kind of not box you in to a limit when we don't know what the weather's going to do. So if I would say, you know, end of the year is when this would end, unless you unless we terminated it, or unless you decided to close before then.
Sure.
Is that amenable to everybody?
Could we have it so that you say, you know, end of year, or weather permitting, or we are able to open our restaurant up again, the brick and mortar, so that if either of those happen, then
is everybody agreeable with that?
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay. And then number of tables. You know, as Kent said, I don't really, well, someone said, I don't really want the tables to start taking up half of that parking lot, the food trucks taking up another half, because of the distancing requirements between tables. And food truck people, you know, if they do want a table to sit at, they're not going to camp out there all afternoon. So you probably have a nice rotation if you had maybe 3 not full-size picnic tables, but smaller versions. You know, what do you think?
I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, I think with the food truck parked there, anybody that's going to see us is going to probably be picking up and taking it with them. yes, we would like some tables. And I'm not, I think no more than 6 or 8, whether it's a small picnic table or maybe it's some rounds where we can put some rounds with an umbrella or a picnic table with an umbrella. But I totally understand. We need the space for parking. So, you know, 6 or 8 is a perfect number unless you think it should be less.
Well, I guess it kind of depends on the size of the table. In my mind, you know, 6 or 8 might be okay for small rounds, but it's not going to be okay if you've got full-size picnic tables.
I think the state kind of recommends that, at least now with COVID and the social distancing requirements, you shouldn't have a party of more than 8. I don't think we would, you know, find a table much larger that can accommodate 6, to be honest. And again, this is something temporary. So I don't foresee going out and getting large tables, just something that accommodate maybe a family of 4 or 6 at most.
I think, Tracy, did you have a question before we keep chiming in?
Yeah, I was just gonna, you know, as far as staffing and your parking staffing wise, I mean, would you be looking at setting up tables where staff would normally park in place at during normal operation? So, I mean, there's that to consider as well. If you have 10 staff members and 10 cars parked back there, I mean, I think allowing them that space to utilize for seating would, or should be considered.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Could we, could the town just kind of include what our space limitations are? So we're allowed to
about their lot.
X amount of the X amount of the parking lot, and we have to keep in mind our tables need to be 6 to 8 feet apart, and this is the space we have to work with. So if we get 3 small table or 3, you know, medium-sized tables or 5 small tables or whatever we do to work within the parameters that the town sets forth.
Okay.
I feel like I know what this one topic segues into the next part when we start talking about the 6th Street area, and there may be a compromise. I think Kent brought up a great point that if we're not closing, we're making 6th Street, or if we consider making 6th Street a pedestrian area, our parking is going to be crucial. And though, you know, so we're trying to deal with where this food truck is going to be parked and what the seating arrangement is going to be, and, you know, employee parking and all of that. And then, you know, 10 minutes from now, we're finally going to say yay or nay on Lucha's having a food truck. And then we're going to open this whole conversation up again when we start talking about what is 6th Street going to look like. So can we move on the food truck and then work out some of these later? Because I think then otherwise we're screwing ourselves by pushing them in one direction and not knowing what's going to happen on 6th Street. And then all of a sudden we're going to start discussing 6th Street again, and maybe that's a better place for them to be.
Certainly, just from our perspective, we're flexible when it comes to tables and what what we're allowed, not allowed to do. I mean, our big thing is, can we bring our food truck to Georgetown? Can we start serving Mexican food? And then hopefully after that, can we also start serving some margaritas?
Okay.
And I think to your point, if 6th Street does become this pedestrian and we are having a conversation about having the truck on 6th Street, you know, we would use the public tables are public tables, and we wouldn't even worry about tables. Whatever tables are available to our guests or not to our guests, great. We're not guaranteeing seating. We're just merely providing Mexican food from our food truck. Otherwise, if we're in the rear of the Ram building in the parking lot, then, we're, graciously gonna accept whatever allowance of tables we're permitted to use out in the back of the building.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Jerry, you've got some comment.
Can I make a suggestion?
Okay.
At some point, there's sort of too many balls in the air. And what's in front of you is a request for a food truck. I get it that what you do on 6th Street might change that. Honestly, it'll take longer to have that in place. It just will. And let's remember, the beauty of an order is that it can be amended anytime. So rather than trying to structure the order to contemplate everything that might happen for the next couple months, because things will evolve.
Yes.
My suggestion would be that you kind of respond to Quintana's, I think they actually said it. Look, we just want to get the truck up here and get started. So I'm thinking that the smallest solution might be the best, and you can always enlarge it and change it. And maybe that's food truck in the parking lot with a certain number of maybe customer seats. That way you don't have to argue about number of tables. You can argue about how many people, and you can start fairly modestly. What maybe we would want to avoid is trying to replicate the restaurant in the parking lot and back. And when you get up to 6 or 8 tables of 5 or 6 seats, you're really replicating a restaurant, and then you don't have any parking, and maybe you see how it goes. If it's just wildly popular, that's a problem you want to have, and you kind of solve it later. So that I'm kind of a minimalist, get started, and I'm inclined to suggest that the food truck is located in the back, be limited to a given number of customer seats. And then 2 weeks from now, each meeting, you can evaluate whether the food truck order should be adjusted. And I'm sure the Quintanas, based upon the experience they have, after they get it up here, will likely want some changes to kind of adjust to their actual facts on the ground. So that's what I would suggest. And when 6th Street gets reworked, or when they get a liquor license out there, and you can keep adjusting this order. But to get them started and give them the high sign tonight, I'd be inclined to if you're in a mood to order or to approve, direct the town administrator to finalize an order permitting the food truck in the parking lot behind the location up to X number of customer seating in a form approved by the town administrator and myself, with a report back to the board each 2 weeks on the performance of the order. And then you can keep working on it. So the only blank that's left in that motion that I can think of is number of customer seats. And that lets you kind of address the expectations of the community a little bit here, that it maybe not be a full restaurant in the parking lot.
Well said, Jerry. Does anybody have strong feelings on number of seats?
Well, I agree with what's being said. Let's move forward with the food truck and hammer out the details later. I don't think we can dictate how many tables or chairs that we can do there, because we haven't defined their footprint if we go forward with the 6th Street. I was at Idaho Springs yesterday, and each restaurant that had outdoor seating, it was sectioned off. And I think that's for liquor license reasoning. So it wasn't just public seating for anybody. Tommy Knockers had a huge section with an assortment of different tables, 6 tops, 4 tops, 2 tops, but their footprint was much bigger than like the deli across the street. Their footprint was much smaller. So defining how the footprint is for Lucha's is going to determine how many tables they're going to have and what kind.
What I was trying to express is, I don't think the Quintanas are asking for you to permit them to replicate their restaurant in the parking lot. And I think they want to get started.
Yes.
And my sense, because there's thoughts on the other side too about about, gee, what are we allowing here? My sense, I'm not a policymaker and it's your choice. I'm trying to guide you to like the result. And my sense is that if you start out with a more modest number that people think of as the people that sort of show up around a food truck, as opposed to that show up in a restaurant, you see how that works for a couple of weeks. And, if it's working well and the community isn't upset with that, and then you can expand it. I'd be inclined to go with a smaller number. If you got 3 families of 4 or 5, that's 15 people. And that's a lot to be clustered around a food truck, and see how that works. And in 2 weeks, if you think that's too many, great, or it might not be enough. And I think you'll know in a couple of weeks, and you'll have better way to make a judgment about numbers after you've tried it a little, as opposed to sort of guessing high. I guess more modestly. The Quintanas haven't said whether they like the sort of let's try it out for a few weeks approach and do some adjustments, but I think that's the only way you can really work your way through this.
No, we completely agree. I think let's, try it out a couple of weeks, see what it's looking like, and adjust accordingly.
Okay. And since there is an additional process that's required, if and when they move to public right of way on 6th Street, let's address just this location. I think setting a number of seats at 12 to 15 is probably reasonable, at least to start. If somebody wants to set less or lower than that, that would be fine too with me. So any other thoughts?
I'm sorry, Lynette, was it 12 to 15 feet was what distance you're measuring?
Not feet, seats.
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 Customer seating.
Customer seating. Sorry. John, is that okay? Paul? Keith has thumbs up. You, Mary?
Fine with that.
And
Well,
Rob?
not to put a bow on it, maybe a proper motion might be to authorize the town administrator to approve an administrative order under your March 24 resolution permitting a mobile food truck at 606 6th Street in the location and under the terms discussed in this board meeting, with an upper limit of 12 to 15 seats for customers, and to issue that immediately and to report to the board in 2 weeks on the performance of that order, and to request at that time any necessary modifications.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to direct the administrator as described by the town attorney. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
This is Tim, I oppose.
Thank you. So motion passes. Thank you very much, everyone. Moving on to the next item on our agenda is the 6th Street pedestrian walkway. It has been suggested, and many other towns are trying this as a means of allowing both restaurants and retail businesses a way of moving some of this, helping them meet distancing requirements, and so thereby expanding their serving areas out onto sidewalks, into streets. And we are discussing tonight whether to do that same thing on 6th Street. And it's been also suggested maybe one of the cross streets, although Rose is a difficult one to try and do that in that block because of the truck hauling route. Kent, do you have anything to start us off with? You're
Not a
back.
whole lot to discuss other than, the idea of which blocks, if it would be agreeable to folks. And also that it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. It can be something that we try this summer and fall. The other thing that after talking with a number of businesses, most of the businesses along 6th Street were in favor of it or would look to see at least to try it.
Okay.
And there were 1 or 2 businesses that would not like to see it. Niceville and Anderson is one of them, and they have customers that come to their door, is one part of it. And the loss of parking along 6th Street, which has already been mentioned. And I just mentioned the items that have passed along. That's not, whether they're in favor or not against the idea of it. The other idea is that we need to keep our character. That's always an issue that's brought up, to try to keep our character as a National Historic Landmark District. And that's always very important. But one thing that we have with this summer and fall is with the directions that are being given and the guidelines for almost every business category, not just restaurants, but every other business, to keep certain distance between people, and to have certain limits on how many people enter the store. The idea of a pedestrian mall, as it was discussed at the promotions meeting and has been discussed at a couple other places, is to give more distance between people and allow greater comfort to folks, and if there's going to be a large number of people on the street. And that's the idea behind closing off the street, whether it's, and each block is kind of a separate block as far as between Argentine and Rose, between Rose and Taos, and between Taos and Griffith. But there's been some support from the businesses on each of those blocks that have supported it. So, and I would defer to the business promotions commissions. There's several of them here. A couple of them have businesses on 6th Street to talk about it as well. So.
Okay, let's start off with Steve.
Thank you, and thanks, Ken. I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, through my work with the Colorado Brewers Guild, I've been personally on 2 conference calls with Governor Polis about how to reopen up Colorado, specifically as it pertains to my business, but it encompassed restaurants as well and other businesses. And that is the spirit of what he is allowing for guidelines, and that is to create social distancing. This is not to, it's not a revenue generator per se, but I paid attention, I paid special attention because the same governor that closed my business down for all intents and purposes for several months is the same guy who is saying, okay, let's open up, and let's open up safely, and let's spread people around. And that makes all the sense in the world. So we did discuss it in the Business Promotions Commission, and I think the closing of 6th Street in either in entirety or in sections is a way to accomplish that. One of the things that I would personally have a concern about is to close 6th Street and not have the merchants actually expand into the street and or the sidewalk or whatever the areas that they can occupy. Because if you think 6th Street perhaps doesn't look vibrant before you close it, it'll definitely look unvibrant if you close it and the merchants do not take advantage of it. And the reason why I bring that up is because I also think, and I understand the concerns about maintaining you know, the historic perspective and making and keeping Georgetown very special. I will bring up one example that I saw that seemed to be an interesting case, and that was down in Evergreen off of Highway 73, right in downtown Evergreen, in which the Wildflower Cafe, very, very small place in a very small historic building, was put their tent up right in the parking spot right in front of their store. And they were able to take advantage of the sidewalk, and they were also able to take advantage of the one parking space. And perhaps if closing 6th Street in its entirety doesn't make sense, perhaps that could be something the town wants to look at as well. There were no barricades, there were no orange cones. There was a tent with cinder blocks holding the tent down with tables underneath it. There was cars parked on either side of it because they were the only merchants taking advantage of using that space. And traffic flowed. And just like 6th Street traffic could flow the way it is today, two ways, you're just now having a merchant in the parking space versus having a car in the parking space. So, that, you know, what I'd like to do is defer to the other promotions people on the call and let them add to it. And I'd invite Amanda and Paul, and I think that's the only other two on the call.
Hi.
Amanda?
You know, I realize that we are not 6th Street merchants, but when the Business Promotions Commission was faced with this last week and I volunteered to speak tonight, I think that what it speaks to is the fact that we're all stakeholders in our community here, and what happens on 6th Street is extremely important to the vibrancy of our town. There's a lot of ways that we can do this, and we're watching other communities, Front Range communities in particular, that are taking really creative approaches. We certainly want to be conscientious of everyone's needs, but we're imploring the selectmen to take whatever stance we've recommended tonight, which from Steve is either a partial closure or a full closure of certain blocks, and move on that really quickly so we can start making plans to salvage some type of summer. And it's really difficult when you're operating in these limited capacities, and we're all doing the best we can. And we're super happy that town's taken on some liberties as far as the encroachment agreements for liquor license holders and allowing businesses to expand their social distancing measures to a degree, but we have to do the very best we can for every business license holder in this community. And that's our responsibility on BPC to try and make sure that that's what we're doing. There was a really not great article written about us a couple days ago, and it was not necessarily something we're taking seriously, but it reflected the fact that our community appeared depressed to the person that wrote it. And I think moving into a summer stance with the train being open, we just want to see the Board of Selectmen do anything they can to bring that 6th Street vibrancy back. That is what makes our town so great. So we're here in a united front tonight to try and make that happen. And we appreciate your efforts for all of us.
Thank you, Amanda. Tracy, did you want to say anything? Don't see. How about Paul?
I concur with Amanda's points and with Steve's points. This is a measure that is intended to help the businesses on 6th Street to keep our town looking alive and to keep people safe while we're doing it. And if that means later, you know, the food truck can be out front, that's a great thing. Also, I'd like to say, if we want to really go to an historic method for the town, I guess we could always allow horses and carriages and nothing else. So honestly, and I do understand the reticence of some of the businesses. I really understand that they've had a method of working for a very long time, but we are in an emergency situation and we are trying to do the best we can for our town, our businesses. And this move, I think, will be a great addition to it temporarily, and we can see how it goes in the future. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Paul. Tracy, would you like to make a comment?
Just a couple comments. You know, I'm in full agreement with 6th Street closing and bringing a new vibrant feel to downtown. A couple concerns that I do have is the blocking the 6th Street from Argentine to Taos. I think just allowing traffic to at least come into town, be able to look left, right, see the brewery, see Library Park. I'm working with Library Park to possibly work on some outside seating. It also allows for them to see the movement. There are some more stores between Rose and Taos, and a little bit more movement. I am open to all options and closing it, you know, between Argentine and Rose, but also maybe if, you know, we don't see enough movement, you know, maybe looking at the possibility of opening it up from Argentine to Rose Street and allowing them to go left or right. Therefore, being able to visualize a little more of what the town also has to offer. I guess that's where I'm at with it. So thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. All right, did we hear from everybody on promotions?
I would add one more thing that we forgot to mention.
Yes.
Just because it was noted in our meeting, there was a consideration tonight that we were going to ask for some expansion rather of the open container policy, and that was on the business promotions agenda. We're not asking for that tonight. We would rather focus on the 6th Street process, and we will take that up at a later date if we feel it's necessary.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I got one more. Hold on. Cancel. Hello, it's Tracy. I'm horrible at this here. One more comment here. Also, I guess, you know, in closing between Argentine and Argentine and Rose Street, you know, I also agree with looking at the possibility of putting Lucha's food truck out there. Downtown needs the amenities and the seating and for the people that do come to enjoy the town. So in turn, now thinking back on it, you know, to be able to close, you know, Argentine to Rose Street and allow for that food truck to sit out there and allow for them to have some seating. My vote is a go on that, yes.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Paul has your hand up again.
I just want to add that the Hotel de Paris Museum has weighed in, and Kevin Kuharek of the Promotions Commission, they would like to have their portion of 6th Street closed. And I would also like to add that my experience in new urbanism does show that there are a lot of studies out there, and I'm sorry I don't have one to throw at you right now, that show that closures on streets, if it's consistent, actually increase business use for the areas that are within the closure and that are right next to it. So the perusal by car is actually detrimental to business rather than pedestrian use of those areas. But that's a secondary measure. I just wanted to mention that Kevin Kuharek wanted his point put forward. And I understand the concerns, by the way. Thank you so much.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. All right, time for the board to weigh in. Anybody want to start?
Well, I agree with what's been said that we have to do something. Breckenridge is doing it, Frisco's doing it, Idaho Springs, Evergreen. We won't know if it succeeds unless we try it. And so therefore, I think we should. I was a little bit unaware that they were talking about closing it in Argentine. I was thinking more of I can't remember the name of the road by the post office, and closing that section all the way up to
Brownell.
Taos.
That's actually
Brownell.
Brownell. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Argentine, gotcha. But Kent said he talked to a lot of businesses. They're all for it. Let's try it. Let's continue watching other communities, how they do it. And by not doing it, then that just signals we're quitting, we're done. So I'm a thumbs up for this process.
Okay,
I'd say I'm a thumbs up for the process too. I feel like closing up those, I guess it's 3 sections, and allowing the food truck in there, probably a really good idea. Certainly do it now and get this thing going quickly rather than just continuing on wondering if it's going to work or not. Let's give it a try.
I agree.
thank you.
We ought to try it all, like live bands, Old West reenactions, I mean, if we do this right, it could be wildly successful. The only restrictions that we have on our success are the restrictions that we place on ourselves.
Well, thank you.
I rest my case.
Tim, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I got a couple questions, I think. I am in favor of this. In fact, I really wanted to see this happen. But one of the things that Steve brought up was if you leave the traffic go and let the restaurants use the parking lots and the sidewalk, since there's not really restaurants in front of Niesel and Anderson, that might help Cora Lou out, wouldn't it, if she could use those parking spaces in front of her business? The other thing I was thinking is I want to make sure that we have the closure of 6th Street so that it doesn't take up any access to Guanella Pass. We've got to leave that open. So if they use, if they go up past the courthouse up to 2nd or 3rd, whichever road's the safest, and go up Rose, then that would be fine, I think. But I guess my bottom line is I would be in favor of closing off the road altogether to just pedestrian use, and I think that would help with bringing some people in there, making 6th Street better for business.
Just to clarify, Tim, when you say close it off altogether, are you meaning just the street sections of 6th Street, but not closing off the cross streets?
Yeah, I think my thought that everybody was kind of leaning towards closing 6th Street to vehicular traffic from Brownell to Taos or
actually Argentine, actually.
Right.
Well, how are we going to get people on Guanella to take 7th? Would they take 7th to Rose? Is that how they would access Guanella?
Yeah.
Well, we've got the truck hauling route as well to consider, and that runs right up Rose Street.
Yeah, 7th to Rose. So that would stay open for Guanella Pass access.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
I think
All right.
I would just weigh in because I watch Guanella Pass traffic all day long because I do nothing but stare out the window of the brewery, and I think Randy probably can weigh in better than I can, but for them coming down the pass to get down Rose Street all the way through downtown, going to Tracy's point, they will see left and right that something's happening on 6th Street, and they should find a parking spot and walk back. And then going to Guanella Pass, I'm not sure, the truck route seems to make the most sense as well. That way they're not going through neighborhoods and things, and they, in the same way, they're coming back up Rose Street, looking both ways downtown and saying, oh, we got to stop here when we come back down or whatever.
Okay, Mary?
Again, for clarification, we're beating a dead horse here. We're talking of closing 6th at Argentine, the community center, the post office, correct? I mean, Brownell is a block away by the old Cake
Correct.
Bakery. So we're
Yeah.
closing it from the community center.
So it basically winds up being the 400 block, the 500 block, and the 600 blocks of 6th Street.
Right.
Okay,
So I agree that we should close that, make it pedestrian only, not let any vehicular traffic down there, not using just one way. Tourists have a tendency to drive down, and I'm surprised they all stop at the 4-way stop sign anyway. I think it would be a disaster waiting to happen if they were driving and we had tents up in the parking spaces and we had some limited traffic. So I think we should make it a complete walkway.
okay. Yes, Amanda?
I would say business promotions is open to any compromises. If it feels like that is too much for businesses, I feel like the consensus of most business owners from the ones that we've spoken with in the conversation on business promotions, and Steve and Paul, feel free to jump in if I'm overstepping. I think that if there was a compromise that needed to be had, if it was more of an all or nothing situation, there is an openness from our perspective to make it advantageous for public safety, as well as the message that we're trying to send, that we are a pedestrian friendly town and we're trying to revitalize our businesses.
Sure. Okay, other board members who haven't weighed in?
You might want to ask Randy to speak to regarding emergency access and public safety, those concerns.
Randy, are you ready? There you
I
are.
am.
Thank you.
I am. It definitely occurred to me that before we take all of these actions, talking to the fire department, especially for the 400 block of 6th Street, is going to be an important step for them. I'm big on closing 6th Street. I think it's as good an idea as we can do. Argentine to Rose Street, I think is a good idea. It's going to help the Quintanas from Lucha's to maybe put the truck up there, if that's going to be a consideration. Don't know if all your business owners are going to want it or not, from Rose to Taos Street being the 500 block. But if that's the case, as far as Guanella Pass traffic, we have to keep that a significant concern. When it was closed just for a short time for the fundraiser for Lucha's, and they didn't even keep it closed, but for a half hour, and during the construction on Rose Street, all of the neighborhood south, 2nd Street, 3rd Street, were livid the whole time. If they were here, I'm sure they'd have something to say. Traffic, even though it is an oversized vehicle route to go down 3rd Street, did not make them happy. The Guanella Pass traffic is sometimes less than considerate to the neighborhood. And the same thing will happen coming all the way down Rose Street to 7th Street, but they won't really follow a lot of guidance. There are people that have been there. They will follow the route they've always taken, and then just, they think they have the magic shortcut to go up to 2nd or 3rd Street. And more will start following them. So definitely don't want to direct it to go further than 5th Street up Argentine as far as Guanella Pass traffic. And it'll just take a lot of supervision and hopefully a lot of consideration from the traffic if they all travel on Rose, which would be ideal. We've tried all of these over the years, especially during Christmas market time. We've had little, let's explore this option of closing 6th Street from Taos to Griffith. And it takes away your tour bus parking, and which they're become real used to. So you'll have to give those all considerations. But as far as making it a closure, I think it's a fine idea. I think we need to do it right though, and put in some permanent bollards for protection of the pedestrian walkway. Not permanent, but removable bollards that will make it safer rather than simple plastic barricades or broken down barricades that don't really look like it's an effective pedestrian walkway. So.
Thank you, Randy. On your point about tour bus parking, Paul has, I'm not sure that tour buses are going to be coming up with a full load
considered
of
that also.
people under this. And so I don't know that taking away that tour bus parking that's in front of the Hotel de Paris is really an issue. You're still muted though, Paul. Paul, you're, yeah. There you go.
So that parking, I know the hotel itself has suspended tour bus operations. From what I understand with the tourism groups that I speak with, that tours really aren't happening in buses. And that parking in front of the hotel is not parking, it's drop off.
Right.
And so it doesn't actually much matter in that situation. But I do also yield to Randy's the one who's on the street and who's on the ground and has to deal with this stuff. So of course, you know, he has more insight than I do. But from what I understand in the industry and from the hotel, that's where they are. There's no actual tour bus worry this summer anyway. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Has everybody on the board had a chance to speak that wants to speak? Okay, Kent, did you have anything more to add?
The only, I mean, as far as the actual barriers, that can be anything from bollards to planters to other barriers, you know, filled with water or sand. That the ability needs to, that they can be removed quickly if need be, but still provide protection, so that a vehicle won't go driving through. Just with all the stuff that's going on, you need to balance those two needs. Need to be able to them to be removed, and when emergency vehicles need to. When we had the fire at Lucha's, and they need to be able to access it fairly quickly, although the fire department, or one member of the fire department, said it would be easier than it would be with vehicles in the way to get access to the different blocks.
Okay.
If you set up the barriers correctly.
Sure.
I do think there has been a reaction to the barriers that have been put up in Idaho Springs or in other places. They're just using it for right now. They're looking at getting something different. But the type 3 barricades that are used just for construction makes it more look like a construction zone rather than something actually that would be attractive. But those are, you know, need to move quickly on it. I'm not expecting 20 people to decide, you know, I even looked up, but I do think it'll take some money to get some barricades to be able to do this. But I don't have a recommendation on a particular one. I just, but I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Cut myself short.
I did want to also mention one of the reasons for doing this, as people have, if we are offering them the opportunity as a business to expand their either seating or retail sales out onto a sidewalk, in order to meet ADA requirements, we need to offer some place for people to safely walk and be mobile. And that's one of the reasons for blocking the street off and making more pedestrian area. So yes, Kent.
And in the conversations I had with several business owners, as far as the idea of having something outside their business, there was not as much enthusiasm for that idea from a number of the businesses. They did like the idea in general, but then part of it was, you know, we do get wind here every once in a while, and
sudden rain,
setting up and taking down different things. It's just like, they need to work through that. I mean, they don't have all the answers right away, obviously.
Right.
So it's going to take encouragement and enthusiasm to get something done along those lines.
Okay. All right. So are we ready to, I mean, do we want to direct staff to go ahead and draw this up, or is this going to be part of the emergency order? And we're just directing staff to draw up a new provision? Is that how you're wanting to handle it, Jerry?
Well, we certainly could, based upon board direction on all these elements, we could create an order, and that could just happen and we can begin implementing. There's a few moving parts that it's going to be up to the board whether they want to sort of see it before it starts happening. So I think you have two doors. You could say, you could direct staff to enter an order and start making this happen. But you're going to have to tell them which segments specifically, because that's key here, right? And sort of what the cross streets, I think they'll always be open, but you know, which segments and sort of what to allow out in the street, which I think will be everything. If it's going to be closed, you know, it's everything. So you'll have to say that if you want it to happen right away. And then kind of like you did for the food truck, have them report in 2 weeks, because doubtless there'll be some adjustments that's going to be necessary. The other door to do, I suppose, is to direct that a detailed plan be put together that can be routed to you and you can finally approve 2 weeks from now, but that will delay a lot of people's plans, and I understand that. So those are the two doors I think you have, but I think Kent will need a little more direction if you want him to start right away and to implement right away. And, you know, in terms of, all right, which segments and, you know, any of the other loose ends here.
Okay. Shall we start with, let's start with all 3 segments. And how many are in favor of that?
All 3.
Okay, I've got 4.
I'll go with all.
5. Yes, Tim?
I'll go with all 3.
Okay, so we're in agreement on all 3 segments. And I think Kent's been putting a lot of thought into how this could be arranged. So I just also, it occurred to me that the parks employee is going to need to get down there once a day, once every other day to water all of those nice new flowers. So the whatever blockades or barriers are put in place need to accommodate the truck with the water tank on it. So what was that, Mary?
You didn't figure my up and down. Well, I mean, if he's there with his water truck, he goes, he's going to follow the same, if the barriers are on both ends of those segments, he's going to have access at Argentine, he's going to have access at Rose, he's going to have access at Taos. It's not like he's going to be in the middle of it.
There are several in the middle, and
don't they have
normally
a water pack? Hose, long hose?
I trust that they will figure out how to provide that, but so I just mention it because it occurred to me when the flowers went up, they're going to need to be watered. So, okay. Do you need more direction than that, Kent? You're mute.
Yes,
there you go.
I am, but
he's thinking.
I know I'm missing something because that's too simple to say just okay, throw them up there and let's go. But
well, the order can include provisions for anything that, I mean, if Clear Creek Fire Authority says they need certain things, then let's build in that ability to adjust accordingly. How's that?
Yes.
And then the the businesses can apply for encroachment licenses or permission as they feel so inclined.
Yeah.
Okay? Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
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 Okay. Thank you very much. And last amongst the new and unfinished business, I just wanted to make public mention of the recent award by the Colorado Preservation Inc. They awarded the Dana Crawford Award to our very own Cindy Neely for all of her hard work in preservation for 50 years. And so the official ceremony ended up being changed from a big gala event at the Botanic Gardens to a more private and virtual event, like most of the other things that are happening. And there's a really wonderful video out there that I hope everybody has the chance to see. But I'm very happy that they felt it deserved. It couldn't have been done. They couldn't have honored a more deserving person. And I invited Cindy to be here for the public mention, and she very modestly declined. So just wanted to make everybody aware of that. Moving on, we are into the CARES funding discussion item, and the town is currently represented on the COVID policy, the COVID-19 policy group. And as kind of an offset of that, there's going to be a CARES funding administration coordination group that's being formed, and we need 2 people to represent Georgetown on that. And I saw George Marlin in our audience tonight, and he is one of the co-chairs of the COVID-19 policy group. And would you like to say anything, George? Here he comes.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, now.
Okay,
Thanks for
great.
joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I apologize. I just got a call from my sister. She's pregnant. So I was actually on the phone, and then I heard my name. I assume you guys are talking about the coronavirus relief funding.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm happy to, I assume you did a more than competent review of what's happening here, but I'm happy to answer any questions or just kind of start from the top.
Well, I just sort of introed it. I didn't go into the details that appear in the draft or the guidance from the state. So feel free to add whatever you'd like.
Okay, great. So what is the process that I see for these funds is that first we identify what we've already spent that might be eligible. And we hear from all the municipalities what they see as good uses for the remaining funds. These funds are pretty flexible and also not very flexible. So they can't be used for revenue backfill. It has to be previously unbudgeted expenses, or if there's an employee that instead of furloughing, you change their role, that is potentially eligible. Where it's very flexible is that these funds can be used for financial aid to people who have been impacted by COVID and businesses who've been impacted by COVID. And so that's really good news because I know there's a lot of need out there. So the way that I would prefer to approach it is that we all look to other sources of funding for anything such as, FEMA public assistance grants, for anything that's eligible there, so that we can reserve as much of this money as possible to put into some of those ideas I mentioned and others as well. So I think what we're looking for is, and I think I heard you say this, ideally staff and elected representative. Your involvement, I think it would be reasonable to think your involvement should match the extent to which you want to influence the conversation. If you have a lot of ideas and you want to be in there, I suggest you participate early and make sure that the thing that I fear, and I probably don't need to fear this because we're all smart and responsible adults, is that we have objections near the end. So we have 30 days starting on the 3rd to come to an agreement between the county and all the towns. And that's not a lot of time. So what we're asking for is the description of what you've already spent that could be eligible, and then some ideas about things that you'd like to see the remaining money be spent on. Brent Worthington and I, Brent is our county finance director, we'll be meeting on Friday to kind of wrap our heads around it and then prepare an initial proposal with the goal to have a meeting next week to talk about it in more detail.
One thing to mention is that of the funds that were funneled down to Colorado, Clear Creek County, based on their 2019 population stats of 9,700 citizens, we are getting $831,775, which could go very fast. There's a lot of places that it could be spent. So just to put that out there as well. Did everybody get, all of our board members, did everybody get the guidelines and the draft? I think they got passed along. So, okay. Does anybody want to raise their hand and be part of that discussion of where these funds go and how it gets distributed?
Let the arm twisting begin.
Oh, God.
Just so you guys know, to take the pressure off, I know that not all of the municipalities plan on attending all these meetings. If there's not bandwidth to do it, then we'll do our best to keep you informed of the process as it moves forward. And of course, we share constituents, and I think we share values. And I think the sources of funds, the ideas around how these funds should be used are pretty broadly shared. But I could be wrong.
Okay. I'm willing to be on this, just because I think it's important. As George said, I think we all share similar ideas and goals in all of this, but I think it's important to have a Georgetown voice. What about you, Kent?
Sure, either myself or Mary will be participating, so.
Okay, wonderful. Okay.
Should have voted for Paul, but he left the screen for a minute.
All righty. Okay, I think unless anybody has any questions about it, I think we'll go ahead and move on. Okay, all right. Thank you very much, George. Congratulations. Congratulations to your sister too.
Or she got hung up on. I'm not gonna call her back.
Okay, 4th of July, any thoughts?
There is a continuing discussion, and Steve will talk here.
Okay.
That the business promotions is looking at trying to do something. The stuff that cannot occur is, the barbecue in the park. There's just really no way to have that happen. The parade, as it's been done in years past, there's not a good way to do that. But there are some other ideas to have something occur on July 4th, and trying to wrangle those around. I'll let Steve and Amanda talk more about that.
I yield the floor to Amanda.
All right.
Sometime in like February, I got up to like leave the promotions and I came back and I was in charge of the 4th of July. I have no idea how that happened. We have a meeting on Thursday to discuss what we can possibly do. The only ideas that are feasible right now that are being floated are some type of a driving event where residents kind of decorate their houses, and we provided a map to people from out of town, perhaps. Jennifer sent me some information on library stage possibly being utilized. I think Thursday will be kind of a good hour and a half for us to kind of nail down all the ideas that are floating around, as it's an unusual time to try and plan an event in the time of COVID. Obviously, there will not be a traditional parade. The barbecue's canceled, but we do recognize there's going to be a lot of visitors in town. And so we're working pretty diligently to try and figure out what we can do to give those visitors a unique experience. And we will definitely report back as we know what that looks like.
Okay. One thing that occurred to me was we have a lot of bells in town, and it would be really fun at noon to have all of those bells ringing.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's a really great idea. We will definitely include that on our agenda for our 4th planning coming up.
Good.
The Alpine hose bell across from the brewery works phenomenal, so don't touch it. It will ring at noon, trust me.
I think it'll actually ring at like 11:58. But
Mountain time is flexible, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay, so any thoughts that anybody has should just be funneled. Is this promotions commission that's primarily organizing it?
Yeah.
Okay, so if anybody has thoughts, please funnel them. I was trying to think of something meaningful that we could do that would still feel festive, but not put anybody's health in danger. And it's really hard to come up with something that is satisfying enough, because the 4th of July is just so fun. People come back to town, and you're looking at people wandering up and down Rose Street and to and from the barbecue, and it's going to be really different. So yeah, I'm okay with different though. So we'll do what we need to do. So anybody who has ideas, please give them to Amanda or Steve, and we'll see what we can come up with. Okay. Next item is the lodging tax. We have talked about it before, and there are timelines that have been discussed. If we do decide we want to put that on the ballot in November, wasn't July some kind of, one of our first deadlines was July.
Yeah, one of the first deadlines is in July, but
okay,
it needs to go to the county clerk by the beginning of September, basically.
Right. But anybody have any thoughts? I just thought we'd, take a temperature on it. Do we still want to pursue this? Are people overloaded enough? Hotel, I don't know if the folks with the hotel have been asked if, you know, if this is a good idea to pursue, please don't. I just wanted to put it out there before we reach a deadline that puts it out of reach for this year's ballot.
I think it would be difficult to put it on this year's ballot with everything else going on and put additional pressure on folks. I think it would be a very difficult message to get across. The one thing in favor of it is putting it on as the new hotel starts operating would be better than later, but that's really not a reason just to put it on the ballot just because of that. That's not a primary reason to do that. And I just think there's too much going on in people's lives to add another ballot issue at this time, even though we may have concerns regarding that. And the benefit of the lodging tax would be to help support the special events coordinator with the Business Promotions Commission. And I think that's a very worthy cause, but it'd be a hard message to get across. So.
Okay. Go ahead, Tim. Were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. All right. I'm inclined to agree with Kent. I think it's there's so much that people have to deal with. I think this is not a good time to try and bring this forth. So I would suggest tabling it until another election cycle comes around and talking about it then.
I would agree with that.
Yep.
I agree.
Whatever Lynette says.
Mary?
I'm fine with that. I'm fine
Okay.
with that.
All right. So thank you very much. In July, we will be looking at the annual increase on water and sewer bills, just to prepare everybody for that action. Anything else from you, Kent? We just wanted to get everybody.
No, to just be aware of it, that the annual increase based on the debt financing comes up at this time of year. We may look, it depends on what the board would like us to do. If I have time to discuss it with Mary once she returns, to have an adjustment to what's stated within the debt financing agreement. We did do a little of adjustment last year, but this year might be, I don't know if you would like staff to present additional options to you regarding that.
I think I'm all right with the 3%. It's, or whatever we kind of do annually, just to keep some consistency. I remember trying to catch up, from the past with all that, and I don't really want to relive those days.
Sure.
I think keeping consistency is a good plan. So, okay. Kent wanted to discuss the timeline for possibly resuming in-person meetings at Town Hall. Does anybody have strong thoughts for or against, or is this working for now?
Well,
I don't know.
I had a meeting with the fire board, and it was pretty good. We kept our distance, and it was nice to actually have the interaction. It seemed like the meeting ran a little smoother. I don't know how the public part of it would work, if we have a crowd or something, but for the board members and staff, it seemed all right.
Yeah, I think we would have to find a way that the public could come in, kind of run it simultaneously with this format so that we aren't overcrowding a small area, but giving everyone the opportunity to participate. but I'm okay if we go back, or if we go back at the end of summer.
Wouldn't we need a better place to be able to keep spacing?
Yeah, I think our facility is too small right now.
How about consider the community center, the lower floor or something where we could spread out?
What about the recording ability if we move the meeting?
And that'd be much more difficult to accomplish.
How about if we stay the way we're doing it? I like that idea.
I actually do too. It's not, it seems to take a little bit longer, but I think the increase in safety for everybody concerned is worth the extra effort. At this point, we don't know what the COVID outbreak trend is going to go. Chances are there will be more cases as things open up, and I don't want any of these folks to be any one of them. So, okay.
I'm good with that.
At least through the summer, perhaps, and then we'll talk again. How's that sound?
Why don't you have your meetings on the new pedestrian mall?
Again, the recording option and also weather. But suggestion taken. Okay. Moving on, we're into staff reports. The COVID update, anything new?
I have one thing to say.
Oh, yes.
That if we do this like Zoom thing, I think Jerry ought to wear one of those like wigs, like in the English, legal systems.
Oh,
I like get him a
A
robe,
barrister's wig.
the barrister thing. Just make sure that he really, owns up to the part.
Well, I already feel kind of bad, Rob and John, that there's so much here already. So there.
I feel bad that you're wearing a tie at home.
I've got blue jeans on. It's okay.
I don't have jeans on.
All righty. Anything new to report on COVID update?
No, all the restrictions that we had, they have, within the last 2 weeks, we did give notice to the short-term rental owners that they could operate again based on the governor's order and with the county public health or the CDPHE public health order that came about. So we did notice all the short-term rental owners regarding that occurring. The lake is operating at full speed, as the police officers can attest to, and various situations come up. The fence we've left in place at this point at the lake, that's not going to be a permanent thing, but for right now, it's right there. And the playground was also last week allowed to be open, although we weren't strict as all get out to stop everybody, including Amanda, from using the playground. But it is open to be used right now. We haven't done much with the picnic tables as yet, just trying to somewhat keep that limited as far as the use or the numbers down. I don't know how much that really works with picnic tables. I think this week we'll be readjusting those in City Park, but that's about it.
One thing we might want to consider doing as we close 6th Street, sections of 6th Street, is maybe put a table or two in each of those sections. And that would leave fewer tables in the park so they could be further apart, and then additional seating downtown as well.
Sure.
They're pretty easy to move around.
That'd be a good idea. At least start with.
Okay. As many of you may know, there is a movement in our legislature to rescind the Gallagher movement, the Gallagher amendment, which currently puts a lot of controls on how fast assessments, property assessments and values can go up. It really ratchets it down on residential properties and therefore prevents increases in property tax revenues, and has been seen as a budget inhibitor, shall we say. It really restricts county budgets in particular, but town budgets as a, not as much as our budgets are more sales tax revenue based. County budgets are very, very heavily based on, dependent on property taxes. So just want to let you know, if it gets through the legislature, both House and Senate, and there should probably be a ballot issue on the November ballot to put it to the voters. Did you have anything to add, Kent or Jerry? No. Is that something you want to add, George, or are you calling your sister back? Anyway, just wanted people to know. So we arrive at the police department use of force policy. We've had a couple of citizens request information, not so much information, but ask if we know what our policy is. And I was very confident that our police force knew exactly what the policy was. However, I didn't. So I asked Kent to bring that forward, and Randy has helped bring it to us. And I'm going to turn it over to Kent and Randy.
I guess I'll start. Our policy was rewritten when I was appointed. Excuse me, a little bit of the Rona, but I'm getting over it. I enlisted the assistance of State Patrol's policy writer, who is currently one of our reserve officer for us. I don't know if everybody on the board is aware of that, but if they see him around in upcoming weeks, well, Sergeant Gaskins has to use up some of all his accrued time. So it's very up to date. Our taser policy, when I enacted the tasers, that was reread by our policy writer and provided by CIRSA. I went with whatever policy they wanted to give us, and it was consistent. So it's up to date as of when you ask for it. With upcoming changes, I'll see what kind of changes need to be made, or what kind of adjustments we need to make to be able to comply with everything else. Obviously, some of that might cost money. Reporting services, body cameras, all of that. So right now, just writing out all of the changes, and before I panic too much, to see where it's going to take us and what steps we're going to have to take. So other than that, if anybody has questions, I tried not to use big words in it so I could understand it.
No, I think in reviewing the policy, I think it very straightforward. It says what it needs to say. It doesn't get overdone. It's very straightforward, makes common sense, and it following state statute and requirements, and it seems very reasonable. So,
yeah.
Yes, Jerry.
As the board's aware, and I know Randy is really aware, state legislature's got a bill that is moving kind of swiftly. Our best view from our firm and from working with CML is that it's going to pass in some form, and the governor's going to sign it. But there's a fair amount of dialogue going on that I'm not privy to, but is important to me, is going on between CML and the county organizations and the bill sponsors around key issues for local governments, which are cost, as Randy points out, for whatever equipment is now mandated for everyone to have. And what kinds of exposures and insurance requirements are going to be adjusted for police officers. And, you know, that's a real impact, not only in terms of cost, of course, but in terms of recruiting and maintaining, recruiting and retaining police officers. And I know Randy is much more intimately acquainted with this than I am, but I know CML is very concerned. They're doing their best, but in today's environment, that's a bill that's going to pass. So it's a matter of trying to articulate properly to the legislature the true consequences, both in cost and in terms of morale, retention, hiring and retention are I think the big impacts on local governments and their police departments. So, you know, the CML website does the best job of describing things that are up to the date, up to the minute. Megan Dollar is the lobbyist assigned to this particular bill. I'm not giving any more of a report than that, other than to say there's cost implications, and the chief is right about that.
Okay. All right. Kent, did you have anything to add?
Again, you know, there is a concern about the cost. I'm not as concerned about the cost in dollars, because that's, you know, that's not as much a valid concern to object to the bill. I'm more concerned about the people cost, because the people cost, having people serve the public in this way, if a number of agencies have the same situation, you know, it could happen to a lot of agencies at the same time. And that could be a very difficult situation to be in, where does it become too difficult to be a law enforcement officer? And that's just a concern. It's not a great concern at this point, but it is a concern based on and how swiftly this is moving. Is there enough debate, or do we understand the unintended consequences? And that's with a lot of bills. It isn't just this one. You get concerned. Have you thought about all the consequences that could occur? And so, but there's a definite need for additional oversight and additional things to happen. I understand that. If those consequences come to this organization, we will try to keep you aware and make you aware of that. So.
Anything either you or Randy or John want to add, or any of the board? Okay, moving on. Water and sewer accounts, past due comparisons. In the, Mary had sent us a breakdown after she had realized she'd overstated the monthly late fees, and what we were not getting because we have waived late fees, and we have refrained from doing shutoffs for the last, 3 months now, isn't it? Yes. And so the question comes up, do we want to continue to waive late fees and refrain from shutoffs, or is it time to come back and maybe people who, I don't know, if the CARES funding would be covered by that, if we could be reimbursed, if we allowed people to apply for that kind of relief or funding. I don't know. Has that been looked at all? Kent's shaking his head. So
Yeah.
do we want to continue to waive it, or do we stop? What's the board's thought?
We will have one more meeting before the June bill
Okay,
becomes due, but there does need to be a time where something needs to occur. And Mary's point is basically that the same people same accounts that were, either on with the late charges or with the shut off list is approximately, there's always a few changes, but it's approximately the same number and the same number of folks that are involved.
Okay.
Pre-COVID and at this time. So.
I guess I'm in favor of saying, okay, 3 months, we've allowed some flexibility and some relief, and maybe start it back up if in July, if people are late with their payments, then late fees would apply and shut off notices should go out.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. You've got the draft of May's financials. Without, I guess Mary's going to be back for the next meeting, so maybe
yes,
hold your questions or send them to her ahead of time so she can get us answers at the next meeting. Then I had 2 other things before we adjourn. I wanted to do a census update, especially now that things have sort of calmed down. First, they were encouraging everybody to sign up. Don't wait for your identification number to come to you. Go ahead and use your street address. And so lots of people did. Actually, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 22% of our population had self-registered. And then something made it so that the Census Bureau said, I think everybody's going to have to do it again. And that threw everything into a bit of a frenzy. And then it's settled down again. So if you already signed up and registered, you don't need to do it again. Georgetown participation has kind of leveled out in the last couple weeks. So we're at 27.2% of our population has registered and reported. So I'd like to get that moving back up. The deadline was postponed till October 15th. Is that correct?
yes.
I believe. Okay, but I just wanted to make a sort of public announcement at our board meetings on a regular basis, just so that it gets into the record that we're encouraging people, because it's so important. It's important for funding. It's important for representation at the state level. There's lots of implications on making sure that we're reporting as many citizens as we actually have. So just wanted to say that. And then also to remind everybody that Saturday is Georgetown Cleanup Day. And I think things are kicking off at about 8 in the morning. It'll be over here at the parking lot next to Mountain Buzz. And the roll-offs will be here and bags will be here, and bring a volunteer with you. So, okay. Anybody else have anything?
I had one question about that letter I received, Kent. Did you have any
executive session?
No, this is just a letter that was forwarded to Paul and I about a street vacation. Is that something that needs to be discussed? You need your voice.
You're mute, Kent.
Well, the question is, did everybody get it? Because John and I got it. We're in Ward 2 and she lives in Ward 1.
I didn't get it.
No. Which street is that again?
So let me just give you a little history on it.
Okay.
It was Kathy Hunnanen had a complaint about parking on
Oh,
Griffith.
yes, that's being looked into as far as
Okay.
the 800 block of Griffith.
Mhm.
They've had the fire department check regarding access for emergency vehicles.
Right.
And we are moving forward with some sort of action, or have a recommendation from the fire department to make some sort of action. I need to talk with Randy about it, regarding the action to possibly limit parking on one side of the street at that location, basically for a couple 100 feet. So
Was the citizen informed of that, or?
not as yet. I've talked with her obviously more than once, but
Okay.
Once the actual action occurs, then we'll wait for the reaction from the neighbor that's causing it's neighbor's
Yeah.
dispute as well. So
Okay. We don't need to do anything else, Paul and I.
no.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I would say it's time then, if nobody has anything else, to go into executive session.
Or are we gonna read this? Oh,
You
Paul
need to go
Bolt
away,
has something
Paul.
to say.
Oh,
I'm so sorry. I wasn't here for the audience comments, but I just wanted to say before you go into executive session that the Georgetown Trust and the Georgetown Heritage Center and Cultural Arts Program, we truly appreciate the work that our frontline responders are doing for us in our police force. And so we could give a little bit, and that's all we could do. But thank you so much to our police force and to you all for all the work you're doing for us in our town to keep us safe and happy and secure. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Paul.
Thank you for your consideration of business promotions tonight. We appreciate you taking the time.
you bet. Thank you. Okay. Jerry.
Let me suggest a couple of things. The request for executive session came up later today. And so while I've created a motion and announcements, I have them here. I don't know if John has a copy of the motion. Do you, John, by chance?
I do not.
Doesn't matter. I can read the motion and somebody can say, so moved. It's one of these executive sessions where we end the meeting at the conclusion of the executive session, don't need to take any action after. But because we're virtual, we have some logistics that we need to just agree on before we go there. In other circumstances, other cities, they've finished the virtual portion of the meeting and then have arranged for a call-in number because, of course, it's important that only the board members, myself, Kent Brown and Jennifer be on the executive session, and we need to have a way of knowing that's true, because when we publish these these links, people can join, and I think the way to do it here, my suggestion, and Jennifer, you're on, and let me just make sure that this works, but we can take the motion. If that passes, you can declare a recess. Then it would seem to me if everyone logs off and calls back into the Zoom number, Zoom, right? Zoom, yeah. Then we'll be able to see the list of participants and be able to confirm that it's just the board members and staff here. And we really only need Jennifer and Kent and myself. And that will start a separate recording. The reason I think we need to stop and start because otherwise the executive session recording is a part of the regular meeting.
Sure.
That's a public record.
Right.
And we need a separate recording. I think that separate Zoom recording, can't you tell me if you disagree, is something the public can't access?
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd have to do a workaround where we do a conference call and I use my iPhone or something. And I've done that before, but that's really unhandy. So once we take the motion, you declare recess, but I think everyone has to log off.
Okay.
And then log back into the Zoom session so that we can start a new Zoom recording. And will that work, Jennifer and Kent? The Zoom link stays live or stays available for us to start a new meeting?
Or I can set up another meeting and send the invitation out, if that would work. Because if we just log in back to this meeting, anybody in the public could just join in.
Yeah,
I think we should create a new meeting.
You could set up a password too, where we have to log in with a password. That's a little bit more secure.
Well, if I just send you guys the invite to the set up the new meeting, then nobody else would have it.
Yeah.
Jennifer, will you include the phone number so I can call back?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll give you the phone number, Tim.
Okay.
And Jennifer, for me, include the HTTPS link and send it to my home email as well, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I've got that workaround I need to do. So we can take the motion, then we can declare recess, and maybe Lynette, you would declare a recess until 9:00 p.m. perhaps.
Okay.
Would that work for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So the logistics are that once the motion passes, Lynette will declare recess to 9:00, but meanwhile, be watching your email so that you get the new link.
Okay.
Okay.
All
Any
righty.
questions about that?
No.
Excellent.
All right, I'm ready.
A proper motion, if someone wants to make it, would be to go into executive session for a conference under section 24(6) 4024E with the town attorney and town administrator and appropriate staff to instruct negotiators concerning fire board funding options and to further move to adjourn the board meeting at the conclusion of the executive session.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Sounds like a motion by Keith Holmes and a second by
Rob
Cannell.
Okay. All right. It's been moved and seconded to go into executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.